Didn't schedule it only. Just let me know when you're done. Yes, I sent it 2/22, 2004. Yep, 2/22. So you guys from legal last night. So you guys should have.
I just didn't print the letter at all.
So
One but. And that would be.
so let's call me into order. We do have a quorum. I know Paul's gonna be with us as soon as he can. That's terrific. I think tonight's meeting, we only have an hour because there's another committee meeting in here. So I'm gonna try to keep this really high level, kind of stuff. Couple of things to talk about really before we kind of get into some of the legal stuff. And I think we can talk about some of the legal stuff pretty easily. So first, a couple of updates. One, we didn't talk about it very much, but one of the things that Leah, the attorney, did talk to us about was if we were going to have a subsidy program, how do we define who's eligible? That has become very problematic. And the food pantry that we were thinking to leverage has actually asked us to pull back a little yet because they've got a board of directors and they need to get them in the loop. There's also some question, although they did tell me that they purchased tickets, they may just get donated tickets and give the donated tickets out instead of purchase them. So we have to work through if we're going to level that, if we're going to leverage the food pantry. Any other kind of program, and I've been racking my brain and maybe you guys can think of something. What we want to try to avoid is any administrative burden placed on the staff. So if we were to come up with some kind of a process that's easy, for instance, you can come in and get tickets if you come in and show you're on main care. And here's your card, and then we'll give you a couple of tickets, kind of thing. That might be easy enough. But I don't think we need to, and this is just my opinion, so I would ask you guys, we need to actually put in the ordinance that there will be a subsidy program in order for us to have a subsidy program. Subsidy program and even the funds for that, we talked about coming out of, not even out of solid waste budget, that was going to come out of the town has some, I don't know what they call it, like alms budget, for that. And so that's where those programs would be funded. So I'm thinking that maybe we don't need to talk about the subsidy program within the ordinance, but that we could still work on a subsidy program that is either very easy to administer, and I would want to get Nicole's input for some options, because she's obviously in charge of the staff. Could they do something as easy as show us your main card? That, on the other hand, that's a little intrusive to people too. So talk through that. But at this point, I wanted to ask you and still pursue to see whether or not we could do something with the food pantry, because of course that would be administratively, there wouldn't be a great burden on it. But are you guys do you have any thoughts on, do we need to write about the subsidy program in the ordinance? Or do you think we could still work on it separately and not mention it at this point? I mean, we obviously could vote an amendment at some point, but.
Yeah, we could just make a recommendation to the select board that
Mhm.
we think this is a good idea and this is a way we think it would be a good way to do it.
Mhm.
That just runs the risk that they might say, well, we'd like to, but.
They might.
And they table it. If it's in the ordinance, then it's got a little more
Mhm.
weight behind it.
That's my question. If it's in the ordinance, then it means it must happen.
But
And the ordinance has got to go to the select board and they could cut it out right there if they wanted to.
yeah.
So I think I'm leaning toward leaving it in.
Okay.
If they want to edit it. Yeah.
Mhm. Then we're gonna have to do some work on what a subsidy program might look like. And I can connect back with the food pantry to see whether or not they've had a chance to talk to their board yet. We can ask Nicole maybe to come to one of our meetings in the future where we try to put some get some ideas from her and put some meat around it. Okay,
And as the years go on, it was, the criteria may change, so.
oh, yeah. I wouldn't suggest, and we haven't, define what the subsidy program is. I mean, it could be as simple, there were 14 instances of people coming in for help with heating oil and stuff like that in the town. So it was very low. But they could say anyone that gets that gets a couple of trash tags, and that would be, I mean, pocket change. I mean, that wouldn't even have, I mean, that could be as simple if they want to go cheap on a program. I mean, we can take a look, and when we come around to it, we can give them a couple of options. But that, so we'll put that, after we get through some stuff, we'll put that on another agenda to maybe have Nicole in and really see if we can flesh out. Maybe we can get somebody from the food pantry to come to that as well and try to flesh that out. Okay. One of the other like discussion topics, and this, the attorney talked about this, and I took rough notes, and I apologize, I did not get them in any shape. They are not in shape really to publish. I'm more than happy to share that there. It just says CMR means code main regulations, you know. I think one of the things that we did talk about, commercial hauler, as we don't do an awful lot, they just fill out the application and we collect $100. The attorney said something about, and it may be in the, I think this was more discussion because I think it was her comments, she didn't quite get that, was really kind of shouldn't have a process around that. So the question that we have, and I know we talked about this back and forth a couple of ways, and maybe, you know, when Paul comes, we'll get some input from him too. Is the view worth the climb? Because we only have a couple of haulers that come in. Some of them don't pay, so maybe we get a couple of $100 a year. Is the view worth the climb to establish what an administrative process would be to appropriately license a commercial hauler to get that $100? I mean, we're talking about, I mean, essentially on the town budget, we're talking not even much of a rounding error. Because I wish Brian were here, but I know Riverside comes in and they pay. I don't know if Smith comes in and pays. There are others that just don't pay, and whenever he calls them, they hang up on him.
I think anybody who regularly comes here with dumpsters, I think they're pretty, you know, on the up and up, and they pay, I mean, they pay.
They pay $100.
I think it's the dump guys, you know, so it's things like
Scrap
that.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's,
And the one thing that keeping it in, on the other hand, you know, the devil's advocate keeping it in, and this is one of the things that the attorney talked about was, you know, getting the information that we need to report to the state.
yes.
Now, we don't have to put the fee in for it, and we can just say that they have to give us that information in order to do business in town, but, you know, I think we have 2, maybe 3 haulers, so we're talking $200 to $300 a year. Based on the budget the way it is, again, we'd have to come up and establish an administrative process. Someone would have to execute that process. Is it worth it? I don't know.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Mhm.
The fees that we get or would get in the future, can that be earmarked toward the subsidy program?
I don't know.
All that $200
I would think,
dedicated to trash tags
I
to,
would think there might be some issues with that, but we'd have to check with Nicole, but we can certainly check with her.
it just occurred to me something.
Can we charge a fee if it's not in the ordinance?
I would be hesitant around that because they would say, what's your legal basis for making us pay?
Right.
I would hesitate around that. I mean, again, we can leave it in, but if we leave it in, it's incumbent on us to talk about what's the process.
No, but, well, like I say, the 3 or 4 major callers haven't kicked so far.
Well, here's what happened, and this is a while ago. The fee used to be $250 a year. And they did kick,
Mhm.
and they kicked and screamed. And they got the select board, Brian met with the select board at the time, and they lowered it to $100. So there was some kicking and screaming, but now it's,
Yeah.
they said 100.
Yes, we're not gonna define the fee, we're just gonna say a fee, permit fee.
Well, it would have to be defined somewhere, so it would have to be, on file at which would
Right.
allow it to
It'll
change.
be
a little more.
established by.
But it would have to be established.
Yeah,
It would have to be established somewhere, yeah, and publishing the rules.
right.
When did they change it to $100?
It's been a couple of years. It has been a couple of years.
It's like $100, it's like,
I know.
it's nothing.
Yeah. You know.
It's not a lot of skin off there.
No, I personally, I think if it's gonna stay at $100, I think putting an administrative process in place is more onerous than we're gonna get for $200-300 a year. I'm not sure the view's worth the climb on it. That said,
I hear you.
yeah. And we can also wait till Brian's back at our next meeting and talk about it with him to try to understand what he thinks might be, but that is one of the things that Leah did say, I think finally, was that there should be a process. I mean, right now, we tell them to fill out a form. We don't check up on the form, we don't do it, we don't do any of that. So that is what would we have to do, and maybe, like I said, maybe we just table this discussion until Brian's here and really kind of get from that, but I did wanna. There were a couple of discussion items that I wanted to pull out specifically that spot. I get the feeling you guys are leaning towards keeping it in if we can.
Well, you mentioned onerous. To get that money, how onerous is it? What has to be done to do it? They just say, we're gonna charge $100 a year.
Yeah, and
This is the form.
that's what we do right now.
Yeah.
And as we discussed with the attorney when she was on the phone, she was leaning a little more towards something a little more proactive, a little more, are you checking this stuff? Or are you just doing that? I mean, and maybe we don't need to. Maybe we just need to spit
We'd have to ask.
the application out.
I mean, if there's an issue when it turns out that the form either didn't ask the right question or they gave an incorrect answer to the question that was asked, then it's on them for falsifying.
Yeah, but we'd have to make sure they're the right questions, and then, some of it, it's a permit, and I wanna really try to do this as a permit fee versus a licensing fee, because a licensing fee implies that you are applying some set of standards, like, you get your driver's license, you gotta pass this and that.
That's a permit.
So I'm
just saying. What kind of incident might occur? All I can think of is, their truck blows up and there's trash strewn all over the place, so they drop a full dumpster somewhere
yeah.
and drive away and leave the mess. Or
I think at one point the fee was, it was at least tagged. Now, whether it really is for that, was tagged for the fact that there are trucks going across town roads, and so that's wear and tear on town roads. But $100 is not gonna,
$300
it's not gonna do
gonna
anything
patch
to
one
hit
up,
that, yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Further discussion.
So you wanna pen that for a meeting where we've got Brian, okay?
Would be my suggestion.
What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to say leave it in there, but we'll see what everybody says. I mean, if we can find anything, another towns, and I won't call it contract, but the process for that, I don't,
That's a good idea.
if other towns do it.
Maybe we could have.
Yeah, we did, other towns did, that's one of the reasons why we picked it up, I looked at some of the stuff and other towns did do it.
It's that reciprocity where if Freeport says you're okay, then you're okay with us.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Hey, Paul, what are you doing?
Turn up the target.
No, we're early, so we're gonna keep it very near.
Or stay in time.
There were two things that we talked about really quick, just to bring up, we were talking about the subsidy program. The legal said, you need to define it somehow. We're not exactly sure what that looks like. The food pantry has got to do some work with their board before they're willing to step up to it, really. So we're not back to zero with them, but and then we don't want any administrative process that's gonna put a burden on staff. So we said what we're gonna do is make that a future topic and see if we can have Nicole attend kind of the beginning of a meeting when we talk about it, so we can figure out administrative burden, because she knows that, and try to do something there. Pat had a neat idea, can we earmark, we were talking about municipal hauler fees, the $100. Because legal said something about we ought to have a process, maybe a little more than what we have right now. And so we were trying to say, is it worth it? I mean, because it's maybe $200-300 a year, is that worth putting a process in place? Or so much, and we decided to have that discussion at a time when Brian's here and get some stuff. So a couple of items that are pending, just to bring you up. I will just, not in the ordinance itself, but I did present, I mean, if you guys want to go back and look at the select meeting. I was maybe 20 minutes into it, and I just presented to them what the self-sustaining tag would look like. That same night, I hadn't heard what they did. I'm assuming they accepted Maine Waste to Energy, which was the lower price kind of thing, and then they had all the math and everything they needed to figure out what the tag was, so that went well. So now we're just back on legal stuff. We talked about subsidy program, we talked about the fee. Next question I have, I've not done anything. Leah sent around a new red line with some of the questions that we had. She highlighted some of the things that were changing. And then she added in on the email, and I was sent this came on the 22nd. And she added in kind of what was somebody, I don't know, maybe it was me, maybe it was when you guys asked what residuals included in the reference to the definition of agricultural waste. So she gave us what that definition is. And basically, if I'm reading what she said correctly, and these things, which is application of sludge and all of that kind of stuff, is exempted from ordinance. So that's because we've made it really clear we don't want to impact the farmer. So that's what she said here. Excuse me. So at this point, what do you guys think? Two things. One, I would like to get your thoughts on publishing her legal redline versions out on the site, so that anybody that's in town that's interested, can see, and it's got her comments on it. We can do this version, with the comments on it. Do you guys have any issues with asking Brian to put this was in PDF, if I remember, putting this up on the site so that the public can see it? I mean, they can access it right now, but right now what they have to do is go into freedom of information and make a request and all that kind of stuff.
clean public record anyways.
Yeah, but I mean,
Why not?
yeah, that was kind of what I was thinking, making it easier.
The citizens of the town paid for her opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I should forgot. Wait something. I can keep on graphics. Maybe pass one down. We'll put that in the inside of your file.
No, part two or nine, well, they still were the right
There you go.
for the job.
So that's, and like I said, we can put it so that it just sits inside your file. You know, it's rip the back off, plastic it on the back, stick them, there you got it. Okay, so. I was thinking of, I mean, we can publish our most recent version. The comments are not as clearly, the comments are not as clearly read as the PDF of her original version. I was thinking leaning towards the one that has the comments on it. Just because it's easier for people to read. My next question to you guys is, I was thinking at this point, really what we do is, and I'll do the work for it, accept all the legal red line changes and come up with a new iteration that's got all the legal, the legal stuff all, you know, that we're just accepting everything. I mean, things, new things that were municipal hauler that says including the town itself, we would have to do that, but just, I mean, some of these are just the,
Wordsmithing.
yeah, some of it's just wordsmithing. Some of it, like she said, a great deal of what she gave, and by the way, I think we did a pretty good job drafting this, was just to be in line with state regulations and state laws. So does anyone have any thoughts about doing that so that we've got our next version, our next iteration will be shown the date of what it is, but it's got all the legal input to it? Or do you guys want to talk about the legal input and say, yeah, I see what she said, but I'm not quite comfortable with it, so. I mean, do we just accept it, or do you guys want to go through, and we're not gonna be able to do it today because we only have until 6. But do you guys want to go through and talk about it and say, yes, accept it on a item by item? Up to you.
I confess, I have not gone through it carefully yet.
Well, we did go through it quite a bit when we were on the phone.
One
with
part,
her.
that's all
Yeah.
of it, right?
Yeah.
But that was before she actually made these changes.
No,
That wasn't right.
yeah, no, there, and the changes based on our discussion are, and you can see it's the yellow that's here, it's pretty limited, and most of it is wordsmithing, like you said. For instance, you know, to enact solid waste and recycling rules. That's, you know, so she added the and recycling, and she already did, you know, it just says residential disposal, residents or businesses located, so the yellow line is pretty easy on, you know, the updated stuff. The one with the comments is
I'm
pretty,
upright with accepting, and then addressing everything by exception versus accepting each one individually, so just. The other way around, exactly. what you're saying. I'm all right with going with that approach.
okay. All right. I will go through, I'll accept it. Excuse me, I'll accept the changes to it. We'll have a next version of it based on that. And then really what we need to talk about are what processes next, and then what are our next steps? One of the things she talked about was DEP approval. Like I said, I've reached out to DEP on other stuff, so I'm more than happy to point on that. And if we want to do that, that's fine too.
They need to look at the ordinance.
Yeah, the ordinance needs to be filed with them after it's done. It needs to be filed with them. So what she suggested, and good idea, send it to them ahead of time and say, hey, we're in the process of doing this. We know we have to file it with you. We've been through legal. We've done a lot of that kind of stuff. But we wanted to, see if you guys wanted to see it ahead of time in case there was anything. Leah was very confident that they wouldn't do anything, but, looping someone in ahead of time makes when you give it to them at the end, it just makes it easier. So that's one of our next steps. And I can go ahead and get that started. The other thing, we've got other public input. We want to do more public input now that we've got the legal stuff and we can put that out for the public. We should have another one session, or now that we've delayed it and we're not going to be implementing it on July 1, we can actually have a couple of more legal, public input sessions that we're doing it.
The two major topics that I got out of that conversation with Leah and Nicole was the first one being more minor is do we keep curbside actually in the ordinance? And the larger being the transfer station and the requirement of that. That seems I think the first one is probably a much smaller conversation. The second one is probably where the real meat and potatoes are. Because it seems as though there's a bit of pushback on that.
Let me give you a quick update. I've been going back and forth with Nicole on this. Because I said to her, I said, one of the things I thought she was going to be here tonight, but she's got a lousy cold and is just not doing that well. So, one of the things that I talked to her about it, what do we do to get that going? And she said she's already working on it. I offered to help her pull together something. One of the things at the last select meeting, when I was there just to present the self-sustaining, in the beginning, they were talking about the minutes from the prior meeting, and they noted Alan's, we need to see how many people are using it and stuff. And I did get the tonnage numbers from Brian, and the town of Bokenham last year they recycled 125 tons. That's 250,000 pounds of recycled material. 40 tons of that was corrugated cardboard. So that, because we do make out a little bit on that, so, but that's the amount that they've done. The other thing that Nicole said, and I was just emailing back and forth, like I said, she's a little under the weather. The other thing she was talking about was grabbing the information from the prior surveys where people in town said they want the services that they used to get from the barn, because the barn acted like a transfer station. And to give the barn credit, when they started doing that, those rules may have been totally different. So they may have been totally within the rules when they started. At the end, they were not. And because of some of the ways of the setbacks and stuff that you have to have when you have a transfer station and the physical location of the barn, it would never have been able to get that license. So we would have had to have cut services at that point, and people said, so those are the things. Nicole is in the middle of working on it. I chatted with Toby very quickly. I just saw him in passing because I wanted to thank him for when they were talking about transfer station. He was bringing up the point, it was a very good one, that right now what a lot of people do, and you were here, I mean, is throw leaves and grass and stuff in the ditches, and that causes public works problem. Unfortunately, the answer he got back is we don't need bulky trash more than twice a year, which didn't address his issue at all. But trying to pull together something. So Nicole's working on it. I've offered to help her pull something together to try to do that. But the thought is we appear to be moving towards getting that license, which gives us flexibility. We don't have to do the stuff that we're licensed to do if it costs us too much money to do it. But with the license, we've got the flexibility to do it. The pricing on it, Toby seemed to think, because the pricing in that meeting led me to think it was probably close to $15,000, which surprised me. I mean, they came up with $12,000 worth of like material, and Toby seems to think that he could do it for less than that. So I'm sure Nicole's working on that too. And again, I've just passed a couple of emails back and forth. But anyway, they are working on getting that. So I think we could probably leave transfer station in with the thought, if this is not going to be effective until January 1, that by then, that they could have gone through that process. The other is certainly, do we want to leave curbside in? So anyway, I don't know if you guys want to add anything on transfer, given that. On our next meeting, hopefully I'll have some more update from Nicole on what it really means and putting something together for the selectmen to try to get them to say, yeah, we are gonna put that on the warrant, or whether if the money's not enough to require to be on a warrant, that, yeah, we'll do it. I don't know.
Any other thoughts?
I'm all about flexibility, as a, to not pigeonhole the town. But if we think that, well, it's hard to do an ordinance on what we think, but it seems like the transfer station is going to happen. But we don't know that's going to happen, I guess.
No, not 100% we don't.
Yeah,
But if we're not looking until a January 1 effective date on it,
right.
stuff will have gone through.
Yep.
And we'll have more information, and we can always take it out at a later date if it just looks like, we're running up against a buzzsaw.
Yep. Personally, I'd say have it in there.
Okay,
I'm in agreement, looking down the road and what's gonna happen in summer, we don't know, so we're gonna have to have something in place for July of 2025.
Yep.
You have that, you have the fact that there's a composting thing, and I'd like to think that community can get behind the composting
yeah.
component. As it is for Second Desert, was 806 people on average a month. You throw in these extra services, my guess is it's gonna be well over 1,000.
Where'd you get the 806 a month?
That was what I believe was brought up at that select board meeting that Toby spoke at, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Was the one who brought up the 806 people last month about, I might be misquoting, but it was,
Yeah. Oh,
it was in that ball.
the tape on that.
You look at that. And the additional services, and again, there are 3,000 people in town. If 1,000 people are using a facility a month, I would definitely call that a value-added service.
That's for the recycling piece of it.
Right.
Transfer station.
I'm telling you, that's where the extra 200. I think we should do it personally, and then there's the component of people getting rid of their hazardous waste. Blah, blah, blah. Couches might not end up in ditches on the side of the road. The Clausa Public Works gets to deal with that stuff and how they dispose of it. Like you sum it all up, and for Toby to do a $500 road and then a $2,000-3,000 gate, whatever, which be maybe it's less than $5 for $10,000, I think is money well spent overall. And again, operational costs. You can add, subtract, whatever you want. It's that flexibility. So that's my thought. The only thing is, it definitely seemed like the select board had some reservations there that I think we're gonna have to overcome.
I would like to say that the select board, the majority of the select board did not have the reservations. We have one individual that does have reservations, and I have no problem with addressing those. And saying, hey, you're raising a question. That's a fine question. Here's the answer. So yeah, I'm kind of in the same place. I mean, we can always rip it out at a future date if we need to.
For more reason, keep the two sections separate in the ordinance so it's easy to rip out.
Yeah, I think there are only a couple of places we talk about transfer station. It would be pretty easy to not do it.
And we can talk with Brian about, is it gonna have to be staffed, and is it gonna be open whenever recycling is open? Is it gonna be open once a month, and
Yeah.
those kinds of things?
Yeah. Well, and again, we don't, even if we get the license, we don't have to do anything more than we're doing. It just allows us to explore it and do it and be able to do it. One of the things Toby said, even people are poo-pawing, we do bulky waste twice a year, we don't need anymore. By the way, bulky waste day is coming up in April, just if anyone's interested. But what happens, it's coming up in April. Let's say you get a new mattress in May. So you gotta leave your old mattress outside in the dooryard for 5 months. And, so even bulky waste is,
I like the idea of we can be licensed as a transfer station, you just don't necessarily have to do everything.
Right.
It's like.
yeah,
And
You got a driver's license, doesn't mean you have to drive.
Right, I'm gonna say, we could all go out and get a class 3 truck driver's license. You've got the license, it doesn't mean you got to go drive a truck.
yeah. All right, so leaving transfer station as it is for now. And seeing how that process rolls out.
Mhm.
And I'll let you know when I hear from Nicole. The other thing they did talk to, and I'm on one side of this, and I know Pat, you're on the other, that's fine, is whether or not we should say curbside in the ordinance. I will say, I took a quick look at the comp plan. They actually had a printed copy, so I didn't have to print myself down in the town office. I was there, so I grabbed it. And I looked at it really quickly, and they do talk about curbside in the comp plan. Now, I know that's only a plan and that does not have the weight of an ordinance behind it, so you don't have to do it. That's just kind of what the intention was. But anyway, thoughts on specifying in the ordinance curbside collection of trash versus just saying there's gonna be a program.
I would leave it in. That's what our very small informal survey said.
Yeah,
That's been traditional for the last 30 years. And if it's in the comprehensive plan, that gives it a little more weight.
I feel like this is having deja vu right now.
that's quite dead, but it's getting there.
And for the record, I prefer we have curbside.
I know, it's just
That's
whether
what I wanted
we
to
write
have.
it in ordinance.
Just put it in ordinance and it has to happen, whereas.
Well,
Come down a
it
couple
has to
years.
happen until, you can always amend an ordinance.
Yeah,
Well,
That you can, through town meeting,
right,
you can amend it, you can do it, but it has to be town meeting. You cannot, and it was clear from Leah's statement, you cannot just simply say, I don't want to pass that budget and just say we're doing away with it. That's not in keeping with state laws and regulations. But if the town wants to do away with the ordinance and figure some other way to proactively do something with trash to meet the state law, they can do that, but it has to be at a town meeting. That said, you can amend it at town meeting, just say, hey, let's say we do get to 25. And we're not able to find anybody that'll do curbside, unless it's really, high, just say to the town at town meeting. Your choice, you want to do curbside and the price is gonna be $6 a bag, I'm just making that up. Or we can take curbside out and we can have a common dumpster and that'll only cost you $2 a bag. Town, how do you want to vote on it? And as you vote on it, if you vote that, then what we're gonna do is amend the ordinance so that it takes that out. I mean, we can do it as simply as that.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
So I think where I stood last time was, I was more or less 50-50, and I just leaned. Keep it in the ordinance.
Okay.
I think Leah had a little bit of weight to that, and which pushes me probably more on the other side of that, and I agree with you, completely is that. If it doesn't happen, it just had to be. The ordinance would have to be amended,
Mhm.
and that was kind of why I felt the way I did last time. I didn't really think about now. The process of that, we would effectively have 2 different ordinance items. Or 2 different line items on the town warrant to make it happen. Because there's the budget side of it, and then there would have to be another warrant item to amend the ordinance, because the budget would be probably directly tied to the trash pickup, and then there'd be the ordinance item And then what happens if we're voting in conflict?
you,
So, I didn't even think about that up until when Leah was describing it, and it's just like,
I think you could probably write the motion for the ordinance as one. Because they're so directly tied, because you're right, and so I don't know why we couldn't write it to say. Under trash, here's, if you vote for this, you are also voting for the ordinance to be amended.
yeah,
I don't think you have to separate those two. I wouldn't know why you would.
well, what I'm falling back to here is the compacting dumpster, which directly impacted the budget for the solid waste department last time. That was two completely separate line items, even though the compacting dumpster was gonna shave off $20,000 off of the solid waste budget, so. Using that same logic, I would have thought those could be combined as well, and then as we went to the town meeting. One went one way, the other one went the other way the first time around, it was just like, it was really. Wow. Yeah. I think it just makes things a little more messy on the implementation of the ordinance side of things because of how things can be separated.
Now, I'm sure the compacting dumpster is a perfect analogy.
Probably not a perfect one.
Because that was certainly, it was a different separate thing. Here's this different separate thing, and the budget for the solid waste department included not having. Now, what's happened is that we're not going to spend up to that budget because it should pay for itself by October, and then we get just pure savings out of it. So a budget was approved that we're going to come in under, and you can always do that. So I don't know.
So for that, I'm kind of, I said back on the other side of that coin, be like, maybe it is best to keep it out at the same point. From the services perspective, I would really like the town to keep it, but
Yeah.
with the flexibility and everything up in the air. We potentially be in a position of having this ordinance and passing it in November, December, whatever it happens to be, 6 months later. Changing it because amending it, and it just seems
That's possible.
short-sighted when I don't want to say short-sighted. It seems like we're trying to build in an ordinance with the flexibility to grow and for the town to manage. And we're gonna be putting ourselves in a position for 6 months later. And having to address it already, it just,
I don't think I think, although it's possible, I agree with you, it's definitely possible. I don't think it's that probable. Only based on what Brian has said about his confidence in that we could bring it in-house for about the same money that we're paying.
Has anybody run numbers on that?
No, he has not run numbers yet, and that's just based on his expertise and his confidence. So although it's possible, I don't think it's probable, but it is possible.
but then we get into that budget. The
Yeah.
solid works budget would be one line item. Or the sort of recycling, whatever we want to call that, but Brian's budget would be one line item. And then this would be another, so we still get that scenario where. We got really two things. That would have to vote on, that would have to pass in lockstep with each other. It just. So this is really where it would be great to have a 5-person committee, I think.
Yeah, I look at what the town people want. I look at what was in the old ordinance. I look at, the feedback we got and, we could even take it out and do the public meetings, ask them. Because I think we would hear pretty strong, or we could leave it in and at the public meeting say, there's been discussion about not doing curbside, just not having it specified in the ordinance and ask them what they think.
I think that's a great session, so. Because I'm kind of leaning for it, but I think, address that
Right.
public hearing.
That, yeah, I wouldn't mind bringing it up in another public hearing.
Okay.
Because if, for instance, we just said in there. The town will
Have a trash.
have a trash collection program. you could have that in the ordinance and anybody who looked at the ordinance, it wouldn't occur to them to think, oh, that means no more curbside.
Exactly.
And I,
They think it means what it's always meant for the last 30 years.
Yeah, and I mean, some of my caution comes from what happened last year. And I could be way overcautious about that. But
what happened last year?
when the select board decided, oh, we're just gonna unfund it,
Oh.
and I was saying in one of the last select meetings, we had Alan saying, oh, we should do away with trash, let the town do it, and he actually did this, let somebody else do it. Even though we've told him many times that will cost people money, it will cause people headache, it's,
Well, that's
and
his particular.
I know, and I'm honestly, I'm concerned about it. And I could be way overcautious there. I mean, it's possible I'm overcautious. All right, so my suggestion was leave it in at this point, but at a public hearing, clearly pointed out, is that and get the public input. Should it stay in or should it come out so that the town has flexibility?
I think you ask the public, they're gonna say, no, that should be in it. That's what they're gonna say,
Okay.
just because,
Well,
I
we
think
should
that-
ask.
I think the people who come to a solid waste public hearing are people who are interested and want to make sure that things are gonna be what they want
yeah.
and not cause difficulties for them and so.
Okay, so where are we? And then we've only got 10 minutes left. And I'm talking when our next meeting will be.
I'm still at leave curbside collection. That's where I'm at. But for flexibility and not have to go through a change in ordinance and all that rigmarole that can, public hearing or town meetings and this and that. It's just, why can't the select board and the town manager change it, contracts?
Okay. Should we leave it out and ask people at public hearing whether they want it in? Or should we leave it in and ask people at public hearing for reasons of flexibility, should we take it out?
Well, me wanting to get my way, I would say leave it out. Because you ask people, and if you ask in a public hearing, they'll probably say, oh, that should be in there. But if you leave it in there and you ask I'll definitely say.
Well, we're gonna ask them
Yep.
anyway, however we do it. I
Yep.
mean,
And who, 6 or 9 people that are here,
yeah,
is that how we decide?
Yeah.
What's the best for the town? I know,
I know. We've already surveyed them both in 2020 and just last year, and that was very clear that that's what they wanted. But we can still do that and not have it in the ordinance, so.
I was joking when I said to me to get my way, that is not, so what.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, Paul.
If it came to. Okay, we can't contract with anybody to do it. And, okay, let's do it in-house. Then if they're gonna have to go to a town meeting to authorize another additional staff position perhaps. Another collection vehicle, and other stuff that's gonna be,
There would be a vehicle.
instead of the contract money,
That's what Brian's
then
told
there's
us.
gonna be a cost.
There
For
would be.
doing it in-house, does that have to go to town meeting?
It would,
So,
but,
And then
oh, absolutely.
the other point is, there's a separate line item for the change for the trash tag price. So that we potentially have several line items that all very much interrelate. What happens if people vote down because I believe that the trash bag ticket price was actually on the warrant, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember it on the warrant, but
I think it was all like the housekeeping part of it towards the end.
it wasn't, I don't remember it. It's possible, yeah.
Again, we're getting ourselves, I didn't even think about that until you started going through it, Paul. Then we have 3 potential line items on the warrant that all have to go together. It just seems
Well,
geek.
trash tag, even if we don't say curbside in there, if that's, we're still gonna be doing curbside, at least for the immediate future. And trash tag is gonna be on the warrant regardless, if that's where, like I said, I don't remember, I'm trusting that, yeah, what's there.
So. I kind of. Leaning toward that for the. That's all rental rate of these reasons.
All right, Paul,
I-
you're the deciding vote, because you know where I am, so I'm not even just saying anything else.
I'm inclined to leave it in, and it may get sticky down the road, but
Tell you what, at this point, when I'm making the red line changes, let me play with it
Yeah.
a little bit. Even might be as something as just making a really clear statement in parens outside or in the margin or something, talking about whether or not it needs to be there and making it very clear. So let me play with it and we'll talk about it.
And I think that also plays into Lee's comment on it as well when we get to that point.
Yeah. All right, then we only have 5 minutes left. I wanna nail down when our next meeting is, and it will be obviously a longer meeting than this, and I will have some stuff put together, so we'll have something to look at and talk through a little more, and like I said, maybe we can get Nicole to guest us a little bit. We'd have to see what we can get. Like we could, right now it's the 6th. Our next scheduled meeting is the 13th, and again, I'm not gonna be here. You guys are more than welcome to meet without me, but you know, that's just 1 week away.
I haven't seen any value added in that.
So then the next Wednesday would be the 20th. That's the third Wednesday, so I'm gonna ask the 19th or the 21st. The 19th actually, no, I don't think that's select meeting. I think select meeting is 2nd and 4th. So 19th shouldn't be select meeting, and you will find out from Nicole when the stuff is, but
what if we just go to the 27th, which would have been our next regularly scheduled time, if we hadn't crammed in a couple extras here.
we can do that. That's 3 weeks. Is that?
We're not under the gun anymore.
No, we're not under the gun anymore. We are going to have to start, I mean, once we get through some of this in another couple of meetings or so, we're gonna have to start digging into how to replace plumber kind of stuff. And then one of the things I was hoping that we could do and thinking about, I want to put it out for you, is that come summertime, let's maybe just go to 1 meeting a month.
Oh.
If you, I mean, it's July and August and May.
Won't break my heart.
Yeah, we've worked, as Brian pointed out the other day, we work harder than any other committee. I think we can take some summertime, so, but we are gonna have to really dig down into how to replace plumber. So anyway, you were saying the next one, the 27th, is everybody okay with that?
That's fine with me.
And I will have the stuff done. I'll talk to DEP and ask them about sending that through. But I won't send it through yet because I'll make the changes and get to you guys. We talked about subsidy program. Next thinking public input. Two of the next steps, and these, we should talk about these on the 27th. We need to start identifying a document as to what the rules are, because we mentioned rules a couple of times in here. And we want to have a good handle on. We need rules that describe this, this, and this, and certainly find from Brian. Don't think they're really codified, but I think he knows what the rules are, so we just need to pick his brain and get that. And then we also need to document, we put in here a lot of times, here are all the lists we need. Here we need to show, what things are recycled, what things are this, what things are that. I mean, we talk about, you can find all that on the website, so we just need to start identifying and doing that. So we can start having some of that conversation next week. Anything else from people? All right, so our next meeting is in 3 weeks. We'll have a fairly decent sized agenda. And we'll try to figure from there. When should we hold public hearings? And start getting that stuff. And then when should we start talking to the select board about it. Because those are gonna probably be some interesting conversations too. But we'll figure that out next. All right,
Good.
anything else at all?
No.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Good. You want to shut down? Or adjourn, well, we'll adjourn. Second.
They're all hanging.
Yeah. Okay, they're on the. Ending our. Meeting here. Yeah.